Well, I guess that's it. Thank you, guys. My name is Michael. I'm a grateful Christ follower who struggles with codependency and sexual integrity. Thank you, guys. Let us pray. Father God, be here with me tonight as I deliver this message for those listening. May they hear my struggles of my past and my victories with you. I pray they see there is hope for their own victories. Amen. Thank you guys for being here tonight. All right, so this is not just any testimony, but a story of God's greatness. I was born in Minnesota in the early 80s, and when I was 3, my family moved to Florida. I was one of 6 kids. My mom worked multiple jobs to support us, leaving my siblings and me with little time to see her. My dad struggled with alcoholism, and when he drank, he became angry and unpredictable. When sober, he was actually very loving. I remember trying to stop his drinking and smoking habits by pouring out his beer and flushing his cigarettes down the toilet. But it only led him to getting more. Who knew? I remember trying to stop. One of the most traumatic memories was when I was 5. My dad came home already drunk, and there were dirty dishes still in the sink from dinner from the previous night, and he had picked me up by the throat and threw me across the room. This has created a deep fear in me, as I would go on having many other instances like this, which made me avoid conflict and anger in any form, not just towards me, but towards anyone else nearby. When I was 6, my dad, again in a drunken rage, had came home and beat my mom so bad she had bruised ribs, black eyes, and a swollen jaw. This is what ended their marriage. And DCF had moved us to a women's family shelter here in Fort Myers, and we switched schools. And this is what started a cycle of moving frequently. It also made it hard to form lasting friendships, as we were always adjusting to new places and new faces. After we settled back in Naples, my mom started dating men who drank, adding more unhealthy influences in our lives. These experiences made me afraid of drinking, knowing the damage it would cause. Well, I didn't drink until I was 22 in the Marines you saw in the video there. One weekend, I had my first drink. Well, it was actually 5 or 6 beers. Since I hadn't built up a tolerance from before, I ended up vomiting on the way back to the barracks, and I had a severe hangover the next day. That experience had taught me that drinking wasn't worth the pain, and I never drank that much again. Also, during my military service, I was exposed to new experiences, including visiting strip clubs on 3 different occasions. The first time was after a whole week of being in the field. I was so exhausted, I ended up falling asleep on the couch. The bouncer came up to me and warned me that I would have to leave if this had happened again. So my codependency helped me stay awake and to avoid making the others that came with me in the cab to leave as well. Also, magazines of Playboys were also shared amongst the Marines in my unit. And it was very common to transfer pictures and videos and on our thumb drives, or magazines as well. So back to another childhood issue was when I was 6 or 7. After my parents' divorce, I remember going to a babysitter's house. On this particular day, my brothers and I were in the bathtub being washed. The babysitter's brother was there, and he had all of us boys stand up so he could compare our sizes of our bodies. Later, I felt ashamed and humiliation, thinking that something was wrong with me. I later learned that this was the beginning point of not feeling adequate with my body. And this experience also affected my self-esteem and how I viewed myself throughout my teenage years. But boot camp, again, military, had helped me overcome these feelings of inadequacy, as I was surrounded by 60 other guys in the same situation in the showers. So back to growing up with my dad. And with my mom always working, I sought affirmation through relationships. Not necessarily for sex, but just feeling wanted. I strived for perfection, excelling in schools with straight A's, and even crying when I got my first B. I could have skipped the 5th grade, but my mom said no. She thought it might be too tough for me since my sister would have been the same grade as me. Instead, I took accelerated courses and kept my grades up. I stayed busy with school activities like safety patrol, and I also ran the school store that year. And after school, I didn't want to go home, so I just played outside with my friends and other neighborhood kids until the street lights came on. When I went into high school, I played sports and was in ROTC. One of the things that had got me curious about one was the sex talk in the locker rooms. All growing up, I had wanted to wait for marriage, but curiosity finally overcame all that, and eventually, in my senior year, I gave in. I still felt inadequate with my dating life. I didn't feel like I was stable yet. I thought marriage would help fix this loneliness and bring in stability, but didn't. When I was 21, I agreed to marry a Colombian woman. She was a coworker of mine for $1,000 so she can gain her citizenship. She had her daughter back home in Colombia, and I was struggling for loneliness. So I thought maybe this would fill that void. She also, after the marriage, she would be able to bring her child home. So we got the marriage license, we said the vows, but only 2 of her family members were there. We got all of this, all I had to do was take the certificate to the county to have it filed. But later that day, I started feeling bad. I talked to another coworker who had warned me about the risks of and legal consequences of fraudulent marriages. Realizing I could face serious trouble, I backed out. I never filed a certificate, but thankfully I had it, and returned the money. And she was furious. But I knew it was the right decision. Oh, also, no one in my family knew about this, not even my mother. I joined the military, again, because of my codependency. The woman I was dating at the time wanted us to join as a couple. So we went to the recruiting office together. The day we went there, it was about 4 p.m, and when we arrived, the Navy and Air Force were already gone for the day. I was going to join the Army, so we talked to the Marine recruiter instead. A few months later, she left me and went back to Michigan, leaving me lonely and distraught. I eventually called the Marine recruiter again, who, even after a few months, had remembered who I was, and decided I was going to list by myself. At first, I was joining to follow her wishes, but after she left, I felt the need to change of scenery and to do my own thing. Ironically, a month before boot camp, she came back. Hooray! And we dated again. However, during boot camp, we wrote letters back and forth, as that was the only way of communication. Later, I found out that she had been seeing one of my family members back home the whole entire time I was away. After the military, I attended tech school in Orlando, and then when I graduated, I finally moved back down to Naples, where I grew up. And I also worked in the field I had studied. While in Naples, to kill time, I had joined this dating site to meet women. Eventually, someone popped up, and I really enjoyed talking with. We finally met about a week later, and after spending time with her, I felt she could be the one I've been waiting for. She also had children from a previous marriage, which felt like a blessing since I was told all growing up that I couldn't have children. To my surprise, I ended up getting her pregnant and completely fulfilled my dream of having a family. I began to fall in love with her, and I started working my tail to the bone for the family, just to get income into the house. Emotionally, mentally, I was ready for the marriage and the family. Financially, I was not. Early on, I would work a full-time job and attend college at night. I utilized the GI Bill to get extra income. I ended up one class short of getting my associate's degree that year because I failed to finish my final term paper for the history class. And internally, I blamed her for this because we had gotten into an argument the night before, and when I was supposed to submit my homework. This would become my first resentment towards her. After having been together for almost 3 years, we finally got married. Things were getting better. I was still the sole income for the house. There were times when I'd work about 28 days in a row. I'd work 50 to 60 hours a week. Doing this for years on end became very exhausting, and yes, another resentment. I eventually realized that working so much made me exhausted and at times short-tempered with others. After about 4 years into our marriage, I started to talk to other women at work because it was easier than communicating with my wife about how I was feeling. And being at work for 14 hours and only at home for 2 before going to bed, that was a lot easier. I began to overshare my feelings and my brokenness, which made connecting with the women at work a lot easier. This woman in particular, her and I spent lunch breaks together talking about our failing marriages, about work, and about other things in life. We grew up emotionally attached, and after about 8 months of our emotional connection and flirting, she had asked if I wanted to have sex. I said yes that night. See, in the back of my mind, having heard that I've viewed pornography in my past, and then also a few times while being married, and that was already an affair in itself. But now, the bad thing about all this is now I'm feeling the guilt, the shame, and the remorse of the affair. However, I continued to act out sexually with her because it was a lot easier to relieve my stress, which brought more stress trying to hide it. Ironic how that is. This affair had lasted for about 6 months. Fast forward a few years after this affair, I engaged in another one. This cycle had repeated because I still felt hurt, still felt hopeless, and I was still unable to connect with my spouse. I am now hiding the original affair, so it was a lot easier to do it the second time around. But living this devil life was exhausting. And emotional for me. Trying to be someone in my house and being someone outside of my house. The choices I had made out of my selfish desires to feel wanted eventually got me kicked out of the house. After my wife had asked me to leave by giving me a letter saying that she felt unsafe, was my rock bottom. At this time, she still had not known about the affairs. I stayed at a men's recovery house, attended therapy, and used apps on my phone to track my activity, all at my own expenses. Eventually, I moved in with a friend, continued to support the family financially. As we worked on our marriage, I used a VA loan to buy a house in LaBelle. But I was still not allowed to live there. In October of 2021, I began my recovery 2.0. This is my second go-around. I quit my job where my affair partners were at for a lower paid construction job, and it gradually allowed to get back into the house. However, still during this time, I was sometimes kicked out of the house when I broke boundaries that we had set in place and agreed on. I was doing all this check into the box just to keep the marriage together out of my codependency and not for my own healing. Money continued to be tight as I was working overtime just to make ends meet. The long 85-mile commute, now that I'm in LaBelle, added extra costs. I got a small raise, but I still had to work long hours. In December of 2022, I got a call at work that my father had passed away. This was very devastating to me since the marriage had started finally to improve. But after returning home from the funeral in Indiana, I had received a letter from the mortgage company saying that the monthly mortgage rate is going to increase by $330 a month due to higher taxes and higher insurance. This added more financial strain on the top of my existing challenges, As a result, I ended my therapy sessions. The stress of not being able to afford bills weighed heavily on me. And as a sole provider, I still felt inadequate again. 3 months after my dad's passing and the unexpected mortgage increases, things shifted. I was told I had changed for the worse. But because of my actions of mistrust and lying, manipulating, and cheating, I had to adhere to certain guidelines. Part of my agreement was to stay in the house, and marriage was therapy, recovery, and accountability. I could no longer afford the therapy and was asked to leave it as a part of our agreement. After living in my car for a whole year, because I could not afford to pay for another home for myself, I filed for dissolution of marriage. I knew I had hurt her badly for my actions, and she was not healing with me around. I was not mentally and physically healthy during this time of living outside of the house and in my car for so long. But what did get me through was staying active in recovery. I attended recovery here on Friday nights. I attended men's groups as well. And these things had helped me keep focus. There's a verse that helped me get through my stinking thinking, as they say, and that's from Romans 12:2. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and improve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. The reason I started my Recovery 2.0 here was because my wife had made me. On the first night we came here to Grace, we joined the Step Familiarization group. As I didn't want to be here, it made it a lot easier for me to hide which group I really was going to be attending. Upon finishing the familiarization group, I really wasn't asked for a sponsor neither. However, one of the group leaders who was leading this familiarization group, Anthony, he had approached me, asking if I had a sponsor yet. No, my thick-headedness didn't get what he was asking about, so he asked again. This time I finally understood what he was implying, so I asked him to be my sponsor. Then, after the familiarization group, I started attending the sexual integrity group for what I had done. I soon recognized I was powerless over my codependency. My life choices revolved around the attention of getting attention from others, particularly women. This was where I fit into my sexual integrity, as I was willing to seek any means to feel wanted by women, even at times sexually. I have seen that I can trust God because he brings me patience and perseverance through my circumstances. After living in my car for over a year, I now have a place to call home. I have a place to lay my head down, and I have a place I can cook dinner, and I can have a place to have my belongings. The price I had to pay was selling my house and my marriage. What I discovered about myself while doing my 4th and 5th steps were that some of my issues I realized were hugely based out of fear. Fear of authority. I was scared of that person higher up than me because out of the abuse as a child. I related to as abuse of power as well. Fear of failure. I strive for perfection in all things I do. This perfectionism also brought a lot of judgment towards others. I would judge them for their lack of knowledge or ability to comprehend things, especially when it was work-related. I didn't like them because they knew more than me, but because they didn't know more than me, but because the position was higher than me. Also, a fear of confrontation. I would cower and clam up when I was having to deal with someone's arguing with me, or even as a bystander. I also realized the need for attention from others. Also, going through my 8th and 9th steps was very rough at first. You know, making a list of all the persons we have harmed, become willing to make amends to them all, and making direct amends to such people whenever possible, except to do so would injure them or others. See, for me, it also included all my children, and my bonus children as well, my wife's kids. One amends I had to make was to my spouse's dad and mom for lying to them regarding the question they had asked me about a year earlier. We were on a family trip to Jacksonville for a long weekend with one of her longtime friends. That Saturday morning, I got up early and I headed to North Carolina to meet her parents. When I got there, they were very inviting. I had told them the full story of what was really going on. And then I apologized for lying to them directly. After our conversation, they fed me a great lunch, and then I departed back to Jacksonville to be back with my family. See, some amends are easy and some are hard. For the ones I cannot go directly to them and I have a living amends. And I have learned how to identify these old toxic behaviors and seek healthy help to get through the rough spots. Today, I have been working through my Celebrate Recovery Step study group. We will be finishing up in about a month now. For my service work, I'm at the Shores campus. I do the cooking on Sunday mornings. We do breakfast out there. And then I have continued to remove all my old habits. But the thing is, once you remove your unhealthy habits, you have to refill it with healthy habits. And a great verse for that is also Matthew 12:43, which says, when an impure spirit comes out of a person, it goes through an arid place, seeking rest, and does not find it. Then it turns back. And it says, I will return to the house I left, and when it finds the old house stuck together, unoccupied, and swept clean of it, put in order, then it goes and takes it 7 other spirits more wicked than itself, and then they go and live there. And the final condition is worse than the first. So thank you for coming here tonight, and I pray that God will continue to help us all through our journey of recovery with Christ. Thank you.